without further ado, I will get the session started with the 2-minute to 3-minute introductions from our panelists. Paula, are you okay to kick things off?
Yep, we've got 3 questions and I'm going to answer each one. So the first one is, what were some key learnings about networking and relationship building that I would have liked to know earlier? And I think the critical one for me was, don't run around chasing famous professors at conferences, because everybody is doing that. It's hard to stick in their minds, and that actually try and find the peers with whom you have very compatible interests. So if you haven't heard this story before, I met Julia Balogun and David Seidel at EGOS in 2001 when we had all just finished our PhDs. And based on that, we started the EGOS standing working group that ran for 10 years. We did a special issue of Human Relations, and none of us, we just came up together, and now we're all professors. So don't ignore the people who you can meet to socialize with right now, who are also attendees, would be one of the key things, because they're the people who have a vested interest in helping you get ahead and helping each other get ahead. Then the second question is, from a networking perspective, what are the top 3 things to do? So I think if you're a PhD student, so I think one of the things you're trying to do is find out, who is my tribe? Yeah. So it's a good thing to go to people's sessions that you think might be your tribe, someone who you perhaps have cited their work or you've read their work and it was amazing. Go along to the session, listen to them. Is this the person who you like to write that kind of stuff? Are these the people you want to have a conversation with in your PhD? Because sometimes going there and watching them speak, you think, I remember seeing a keynote speaker at a key conference once say, whose work I love, but when I watched that person present and interpret their work, I thought, oh no, that's not the way I see the world. And that was helpful for me, because I could then move on to find my tribe. And also you'll try to find your examiner and your panel and your future place to work. So go looking at the people you think you're interested in or whose papers you admire, and see what the discourse around them's like, see what they are as a person. Could this be my tribe? And then I think the final question was, what were the things I experienced that impacted my professional development the most? I'll say it came a little bit later in my career. I got a grant where we were forced, part of the grant was we had to have practical application. We had to prove that we were with these deliverables. So I had to run workshops for industry and stuff like that as part of my results. I was terrified of it. I didn't think that that was what I should be doing. I should be writing scientific papers, but actually it was the best thing for me. And, you know, I now firmly believe in the impact of my research, and it has a lot of impact. I'm on boards and things of these kinds of national and international committees that are shaping the policy agendas in my area. So I would say, you know, if something scares you, just check. Are you scared because it's not something you should do? Or are you scared because it's a little bit hard, but will be very formative? Good luck. Have fun.
That's wonderful, Paula. Thank you. Eero, over to you.
Well, I'll just follow suit, and I try not to repeat the same things, and those were the greatest pieces of advice. But let me first thank you, organizers. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Priya. Thank you, Fannie, for putting together this fantastic event. And I especially like the word authentic that speaks to me. So I'm just going to say a couple of words about my background and networking, and then probably come to 3 or more things in terms of what I think are useful things to keep in mind. So my experience is relatively straightforward. I don't think that I have been very strategic or instrumental at any point really in terms of networking. Maybe I should have been more. I've just gradually got to know a lot of people in my early career and later on, and all kinds of people really, and some of whom become collaboration partners, and some even, you know, good friends for life, like Paula. I hope we're still friends. Yeah. So so this means like connecting, like Paul was explaining, not only with the more senior people, but also the ones who are at the same career stage. I think my experience actually is the reverse. So perhaps I should have gone more to the senior people in terms of getting some help in terms of not learning everything the hard way. So maybe this all leads to the conclusion that, you know, when networking, you know, we should be, you know, keeping a lot of, seizing the opportunities we have, but most importantly, just letting it happen. And I don't think that we can emphasize too much, gatherings like this in terms of conferences and workshops and special events. I think there's a lot of value. Sometimes we don't see the value immediately. It may come a lot, further down the road when, we can connect with the people we once met at some point. I know it's more difficult with this one, with this new human experiment that we are experiencing at this point, but I think that's one of the things. So the value of like getting to know people doesn't like realize immediately. So the 3 pieces of advice, I try to be real brief here. I think really be authentic. I think this is important. I think it's just about being curious, open, friendly yourself, and let the networking happen rather than being overly instrumental. Second one, it's a good thing to meet with all kinds of people, and I think Paula was explaining already better than I can do in terms of like the fact that there are some people that you will connect better, and then there are perhaps some communities that may not be the obvious ones, or maybe something that you will later on then connect with for some reason or for purpose. And I just want to finish off by saying that yes, I think events like this, and especially in this very special Academy conference, I think we should be doing our utmost to also connect between the sessions, so that we can, at least in part compensate for the fact that we are really missing. That is the valuable pieces between the sessions when bumping into people, seeing, good old friends and making new ones.
Lovely, thanks, Eero. I just had a quick peek at the chat, and I can see there's been a few thumbs up and not so much comments as thank yous, and people are getting things out of this. So thank you very much, both of you. Steph, if I move over to you, please.
Yeah, so I guess I'll continue on this kind of micro community theme, which is to really think about how do you build that micro community. And Paula had, great advice about really just trying to find your tribe. But I guess what I would maybe contribute is, so how do you engage those senior scholars when you are interested in trying to become part of someone's tribe? And I think the best advice that I received at an early stage was simple, and it felt trite at the time, but it was be useful. And frankly, that has actually been a really good thing for me to just remember throughout my career is when you're trying to work with someone or you want to engage with someone, especially senior scholars are spread quite thin. There's a lot of administrative, they have, lots of different PhD students and former PhD students and lots of commitments and all of that. So when you do engage with them, it's really important to find ways to hold their attention, because I find when you're working with senior people, if you can get them dug in on a project, then you get lots of their attention. But the key is that they always get pulled away. There's always competition for it. And so the way to do that is to turn around things quickly, to put things in very simple emails and with clear instructions, and ask for specific feedback. And so that's what I mean about be useful, finish things. And so I think the other thing maybe that I'll just say quickly about establishing that micro community is for me, it's been really important not only to nurture a micro community with other scholars, but as Paula was saying, to nurture a micro community with what I call thinking practitioners. And there's a whole set of people out there that are in industry, but actually are really interested in bridging research and practice. And by establishing some of those formal relationships, like I've done through the embedding project, it means now that I have really great access from a research perspective. And so my access also then has been a way for me to connect with others, because I can facilitate access for others when they have a topic that is of interest to that group. So I would say try and build both communities as you go along.
That's great. She says, actually, I'm muting. Thank you, Steph. I'm just looking at Shenghui. Can we go over to you? What time zone are you?
I'm located in Shanghai, so it's now 9 o'clock in the evening.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so hello everyone. I'm Shenghui and from Fudan University in Shanghai. So let me thank first all of our organizers for organizing this great session, and it's an honor to join this panel together with all our senior scholars. So compared to our senior colleagues, I'm still kind of at the early stage of my career. So I did my PhD, I finished my PhD 5 years ago, and David Seidel was my PhD supervisor. So in terms of academic life, I was naturally born into this strategy as practice community because David is a main strategy as practice scholar. As I just finished my PhD not that long time ago, maybe I just share a few things that I found particularly helpful as a PhD student in terms of networking. The first thing I think is to find your community. I mean, in terms of Paula's word, this is find your tribe. And for me, this is naturally the strategy as practice community. And this is where I feel really comfortable to talk about my research. This is where I really find people who share my research interests and research methods. And as we know, research can be lonely, particularly when you are a PhD student. So finding somewhere that you belong, you know where you belong, is very, very important. And in terms of doing this, I think attending conference is very helpful. Like, I mean, the academy. I mean, we have the strategy as practice interest group here. But I think a key thing is to really attend the conference regularly. Because when you do it regularly, then you really meet the same people I mean, every year almost. Then that's how you really get to know people and really get friends. And the second thing I found helpful is to actually also to be proactive in your community. I mean, this could be like being volunteering to help at the conference, or to, I mean, organize panels, or being a reviewer regularly for the conference. I mean, these are small things, but they actually put you in a very good position to get to know people and also get yourself known. And the third thing I found helpful was to actually to do research visit during my PhD. I did actually one semester visit at HEC Montreal. When I finished my data collection, I visited Anne Langley there for almost half a year. And that was really a rewarding experience because I was able to talk to Anne Langley for, I mean, almost every 2 to 3 weeks during the semester. That was really luxurious, and I really got to know her and also to learn from her. And that's also how I got to know the strategy as practice group at the HEC Montreal in general. So that's, I mean, a few things I found particularly helpful. I guess I just stop here and we can discuss more later.
Hello, everyone. Super excited to be here. I am Priya Kannan. I'm with the University of San Diego. I'm a professor here, and also I run the Entrepreneurship Center. I do want to give a shout out to Lisa for being our fearless leader, putting this together. It's a pleasure working with Fannie as well, and to all the senior scholars and everybody here today. I do want to say, you know, unlike, it's the opposite of what Shenghui said, you know, I'm also, like Shenghui, I also graduated about 9 years ago. But I started networking with the Strategy as Practice Scholar group only after tenure. And this was because I wasn't, so the first advice I would have about networking is first do it. And the reason I say that, and it seems so obvious, is when I was going through my PhD, I had young children. So all I was doing was coming, presenting, and getting back. I was like, I wanted to be super efficient, get things done. But in the process, lost out on meeting this wonderful community of people. And I stumbled upon this group after a long time that I lost about 8, and I graduated 9 years, right? So I've lost about 8 years trying to find my tribes to speak. So the first thing about networking is do it. The second thing about networking is It's also when you're a PhD student, you're starting out, you're like, oh, if I go talk to a senior scholar, they're going to think I want something from them. People are always going to think I want something, so I don't want to do it. Networking is not about that. It's about asking for directions. And after I started networking, what I figured out is people are more than happy to help you, despite the fact that they are busy. And as Steph said, right, it's really helpful to make yourself useful, but at the same time, they're generous and they are willing to help out. I wish I had known that as I was starting out, that it's okay to ask people. It's just asking for directions. It's not a bad thing. And the third thing I would say is your careers will change, your research will change, your research interests will change over time. So don't be extremely specific about this is the one thing I want to do and this is the only person I'm going to talk to. As long as you find people that are interesting, that resonate with you, and that this goes back to the authentic networking piece. And as Eero said, if you put yourself, if you are who you are, and then you'll attract other people who see you for who you are, and then you never know how these connections play out. So those are the three things that I would say in terms of networking.
Excellent. Thanks ever so much, Priya. I was just looking, and there's about 25 people more than there was when I did the introduction. So just to tell people, we're going to have some questions now that have been sent in advance, but then we're going to have a session based on live questions from the chat. If you've seen, there's no chat in Zoom. The chat page is on where you clicked to join the session. So it's on the Academy page where you clicked and joined the session. If you want to add questions there, then Fannie is monitoring them and we'll cover those in that session. And also we've said use it like Twitter. If you hear a good quote, then I've got to down here, be useful. Put it in the chat, and then other people coming to the meeting will see that, and they'll see a recording later as well. So welcome to everyone who's joined after the introduction. And we've had the introductions for each of the speakers. Now we're going to have 3 or 4 questions where each couple of panel members respond, and then we're going to go to the live session and take some of the live questions from the chat. Okay, so let me move on. So we had some brilliant questions from the early career program. The strategizing activities and practices has an early career program every year, and obviously it's very different this year, but welcome to those people and thank you for their questions. So the first question was by far the most popular, and we're going to ask this of Paula and Eero, and we're going to start with Paula. And the question was, if you want to publish in top academic journals, what sort of networking can help with this? Paula, over to you.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things on that. You need to network with the people who are aiming for those same journals. So, I'm aware that we have scholars from all around the world, and some of you are in schools where perhaps not many people in your school have published in the top journals. And so you need to go to the conferences and go to the paper development workshops where the people who publish in those journals are, and put your developmental papers to those workshops. Take the feedback on board and try to understand it. Develop peer networks for friendly reviews of paper. So I'm an editor, and one of the first things I tell when people say, send me something like, would this be interesting to the journal? Is I say, well, the first thing you need to do is to make sure you get it out for friendly, constructive review from other people before you even submit it. Because if your friends who like you can't understand your paper, then you can be pretty sure that your reviewers won't. So that's the kind of thing you need to create, that sort of peer network who'll give you feedback that's honest and direct. You need to hang around the people who are publishing in those journals and distinguish between that. Don't think that you have to have the people who are publishing in those journals always give you the feedback. Sending your paper off to a senior scholar, hoping that they'll give you some feedback, will very, very rarely net you any outcome. So don't think, well, I'll just send it off to them. Find someone else to help with that, but go to where they are giving feedback and where they have time, and we'll try. And then I think the other thing is there's 2 ways to do this. One is maybe to partner with a senior scholar. It has pros and cons. I think you need to remember what Steph said to us, which is they're already doing a lot of papers. Some of them might just say yes, but not have any time. So that won't actually help you. You'll just end up working by yourself anyway, but feeling discouraged by their lack of enthusiasm. So if it is with a senior scholar, maybe it's one you've actually gone and visited with, where you've established some ground rules for working together, and where you understand that they are interested in it. And then the other thing I would say is, more so than a senior scholar, find someone who is ontologically similar to you. Now, what I mean by this is, I'm a practice scholar, and I have tried occasionally to write with people who are more, I mean, they're qualitative and things, but they're more positivistic, they're more functionalist in their approach, and we've never been able to find middle ground when we hit the reviews. So, you know, in that sense, the people that you are going to want to publish with, they maybe have different theoretical lenses to you, and that's why you're coming together, but having some sort of seeing the world in the same way, having the same view on everyday practice or social construction or something, is going to make your life easier when you're interpreting data and when you're going through the second, third, or even fourth round of review. So treat that thing of publishing as a long-term game, and it's not the person who can, you know, be famous at the start. It's the person who can be there with you over the long term. Believe me, by the third review, the person who's doing some work will matter so much to you. And their name won't be the least bit important, just how much work they do with you down there in the boiler room, responding to the reviews.
I'll just follow, and I hate this, I mean, because Paula is kind of stealing all my points, or at least that's what I'm saying now, but I very much agree. I agree too much, but I'll try to mention some other things as well, but let me reinforce some of the points you were already talking about. If we think about networking in terms of collaboration and authorship, I think there is this case to be made that, you know, let others help you with the paper. And here we come to this issue of that we've been talking about already quite a lot in terms of what senior versus, you know, other scholars can contribute. And you know, of course, you know, it's not a one-way street, and you know, it always depends on so many things, but on the whole, I think that's a good idea to, especially in the very beginning of one's career, to have someone who has already experience with you, because it's not only like crafting the first version of the paper, but it's also then, you know, getting the R&R and then surviving the, you know, the review process, where oftentimes the experience can be so helpful. I think another way of putting it in terms of what, Paul, you were talking about is that, okay, you basically want to co-author with people you want to be working with. So think about that. You know, it's oftentimes, if you're really aiming high, it's a really long process. So many stages, a lot of work, a lot of work that you have to be doing together. So better have someone who, like you said, Paula, ontologically similar, or otherwise someone that you can, you know, really work with and you trust and you feel comfortable with. Of course, you don't know that always in advance, but in some cases, you know, the collaborations go beyond one paper, but you know, then go on moving to other papers as well. And those are the, you know, the great types of collaborations. I'm not going to talk too much about that because I know that we don't have that much time. Also want to say that, again, some of this can be kind of bland, but I think, you know, there's a lot of room for being opportunistic. And I don't mean this as a bad word, but, you know, like seizing the opportunity. Sometimes there's special issues. Sometimes there's a, you know, new angle that you could perhaps adopt and use your data for that, which may be a great basis for collaboration. Okay, about the journals. So I'm in the outgoing team of AMJ, so I'm mainly talking about this journal. And anyway, I have a, you know, I've been rejected from so many journals, so I have a lot of authority here in terms of failures and successes as well. I think that it's really important to know the journal. So it is a good idea to attend the workshops and, you know, otherwise try to get to know what kinds of people are there working as editors. At the same time, I would say that there are not so great differences between the leading journals, so that in some ways, so that the same kinds of rules of thumb in terms of, you know, when to submit, what to do with the R&Rs, they are similar. But nevertheless, especially for the first submission, I think it's really good to know as to where you are going to be sending it to, so that you would be comfortable or relatively comfortable with the idea that there's someone who would be sympathetic to these ideas to begin with. I'll just mention two things which probably go beyond the networking angle, but my favorite piece of advice from Jason Shaw, the previous editor-in-chief for MJ, was be slow. Be slow is a good piece of advice. And I think their networking helps in terms of getting feedback, making sure that the first, when you submit the paper, that you have a real chance of getting an R&R. And it may be good that you know the editors, but let me just assure you that it doesn't, really make a difference. So the editors are not, making your life any easier, even if you are their friends.
That's lovely. Thank you for the be slow advice. I feel like a genius. It's probably my watchword at the moment, but yes, we all have those moments, don't we? But yeah, slow but careful. Okay, that's great. Thank you. I know that's something that everyone really wanted to know about. And this is another question, but this one picked out was particularly sang towards the theme of authentic networking. So I'm going to ask this, I'm going to come to Priya first and then to Shenghu. And the question is, as an early career scholar, is it important to do work in an established area of research with an established community, or is it more important to develop your own identity as a researcher, even if that means going it alone? Over to you, Priya.
Thank you, Lisa. So yeah, that was one of the questions that got me thinking. So when I reflect back on my PhD days, both my advisors, my chairs, were not doing any research in the area of either entrepreneurship or strategy as practice. And this I'm talking about 2008, when SAP was just making inroads into the US. So not many people knew about it or were able to direct me. But it was like, as Paula said, and Eero also said, it's finding people that are ontologically similar. I didn't know that was what that was called. But all I knew as an early stage PhD scholar was they are talking about this and it doesn't make sense. So you kind of have that. And so a part of it, so there's trade-off to both. So if you are actually saying, okay, this is how I want my career structured, and you follow, I want to get the PhD, I want to be successful, you kind of say, I'm going to do what it takes, follow what my advisors are asking me to do and go ahead. That'll get you published, that'll get you in the networks, but that might not be in the networks you want to be for the rest of your life. So that's the first choice you have to make. The second is you can say, like I did, which is, I'm going to do what interests me, and I'm going to find people that are around there that can help me. And now it's much easier with, all the virtual communities and LinkedIn and everything else out there. But that's going to also slow down the process of you finding the right community, finding the right way to think about this, finding the journals. So that's going to be a lot of upfront work on your own to do that. So having said that, it's possible to bridge the two by, at least in this, at least it's 10 years, 12 years fast forward, when you think about but the thing is, you have to sustain doing your research by focusing on what you are interested in. Once you know what's the phenomena, what drives you, and what you believe in, then you can start looking out. So my advice would be to bridge both, to have your community support you in what you're doing, but also find scholars, even as an external reviewer or a dissertation advisor on the committee, who can guide you to where you want to go. So that's kind of how I would see it.
Shenghu?
Thanks. I agree very much with what Priya said, and I also share her view on this. You have to follow your interest. I mean, otherwise it's just no fun to do research. Maybe I just share some experience in my current school. At my current school, there's only one researcher who is really doing qualitative work, and nobody is really doing strategy as practice work. So I don't really have an established community around me, which I'm interested in. So in terms of, research community, I don't see my nearby colleagues really as my community. I would see more, the SAP community in general, the international community, as my community. And that's where I have my co-authors, and that's where I would exchange my work, research ideas, so on and so forth. So I guess that's exactly why we need international academic network, because then you don't have to really rely on, I mean, your school or your colleagues around you. And this gives you much more flexibility when you want to look for a new job in that respect. Also, maybe another part of the question was that whether you want to do research in an established area or not, because there were two parts, I think, in the question: established area of research or established community. I think the established area of research is another question, because often as qualitative researchers, at least for me, at the beginning, I always write my papers like, you know, I'm doing this topic, I'm doing qualitative explorative work, and nobody has done this before. So that's kind of discarding that there is an established area of research. And that's actually very, very difficult to frame your contributions or to make connections with the literature. So in terms of whether you do research in an established area of research, I think that very much depends on how you construct the state of the literature. And it's much easier if you can construct an established area of research around the topic, instead of saying that you're doing something completely new. I guess, yes, that's what I want to share in terms of this question.
Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to a very topical question. I'm going to come to Steph first, and then I'm sorry, Eero, you get to take the follow-up again. So the question is, how might your advice on networking change given the COVID-19 situation, particularly with a view to gaining an academic job? Over to you, Steph.
Yeah, so I'm going to say something that might seem counterintuitive to some people, but it's not as common in business as it is in the natural sciences to do a postdoc. So I did a postdoc. I did a postdoc because I had a very narrow geographic location where I was looking for a job, and there just weren't any jobs available in that geographic location. But I also did a postdoc because I sort of, towards the end of what I was doing in my PhD, I started to figure out where I wanted to be, right? I started to figure out what I was interested in. And so I wanted the chance to actually kind of delve in and explore that and build that network. And I think postdocs can be an amazing way to build a network. And so I just would think about, you know, I'll say I was lucky because in Canada we actually have a postdoc scholarship program, and once you get the grant, then you can go wherever you want to go. So basically that means, you know, you have that portability. So maybe your country doesn't have a program like that, but it seems like more and more countries do. And especially given what's going on right now, you might want to look and see if there are grants available. And you may also find that people had set aside funding for travel, right, as part of what they were doing. And so a number of us suddenly have a little bit more money than we had thought that we had, because we're not going to be spending it on flights. And so in my case, I've been trying to use that money to support PhD students and others around me, that, you know, to be able to kind of spread that around. So that would be my thing, is to think about, yes, you know, look for a job, but also think about there's actually a lot of benefits in doing a postdoc, and consider that as an option as well.
That's lovely. Thanks very much. Eero, do you want to come back briefly, maybe just for 60 seconds?
Oh, okay, 60 seconds. I think that with COVID, it changed a lot of things for a period of time, but not all things forever. So I think this is the mindset that I find comforting at this point. So I think the obvious thing is that, okay, look around, seek the opportunities. Some schools are not recruiting for a while, but others are. So you know, the world is not even. So there are opportunities, and I also just want to reinforce that point. Postdoc, I've always been a big fan of postdoc positions, so go for that. And remember the international outlook. It may be that the opportunities are not where you thought that they were.
Paula, go on. If you got something, go for it.
Just very quickly on the postdoc, I've had some fabulous postdocs. Paul Speed, Jane Lee, Rebecca Bednarek, Gary Burke, Konstantinos Chalkias, all of them have published wonderful things with me. They've gone on to be friends, colleagues, and research. You know, so a good postdoc is for me incredibly valuable and exciting and stimulating to have around. So I like networking with postdocs. So in that sense, I think what Steph said is very valuable. And Eero, I know, also has had a lot of great postdocs. So there's a lot to be said for it in return for the insecurity that you have as the trade-off in the job.
You have had some great postdocs. Right, I'll just do a quick time check. So we have one more question, but I don't want to go past 1:45 because I want to give time for the live Q&A. You've got questions there, Fanny, coming up? All right, great. So we'll ask this last question. It's going to Shenghu first and then Paula. And like I say, but we won't go past the 1:45 so we can get more time for the live questions. Then we'll just get them thrown at us. So the question is, and it's important to ask because it's about what other people can do. So networking is a two-way street. So what can you give back as a PhD student or early career scholar? How can you start to contribute? Shenghu?
That's a very good question. I would say not much, but I guess it depends a little bit. I mean, in terms of, getting advice or getting the feedback on your work from a senior scholar, I mean, you really don't have much to offer if it's not like a paper collaboration. But I think that's not really a big problem. As a junior researcher, probably you have to show appreciation and you have to show respect, but usually you do get feedback. I mean, but don't chase the famous professors at the conference. Write an email beforehand and make an appointment and try to get a one-on-one meeting, maybe just for 15 minutes, maybe for half an hour. That's much, much more helpful than chasing someone at the conference. That's one thing. I think quickly about the second aspect of that is that if you work on a project together with a senior scholar, I think what you can offer is time. I mean, you have, as a junior scholar, you have the time to do the groundwork. This could be data analysis. This could be exploring a new literature. It could be about, driving the project. So that's, I think, where you can contribute. And also maybe you can contribute by providing a nice or interesting data set. Other than that, I think you don't, probably that's it, yeah. Now I let Paula talk about the other side of the story as a senior scholar.
Okay, so I think something that I was able to do early in my career, and back then it was kind of like Jerry Johnson and Leif Malin and Richard Whittington were running the stuff, is we were able to do things to help them on PDWs. So for example, organizing a symposium, a PDW at the Academy, you can chair it as a junior scholar and invite senior scholars to speak and present. And, you know, so those people might not have had time to put together a PDW or something, but if you put one together for them, that where they can showcase, you know, they get to know you, you get to know more about them, you make a little relationship. Another thing is, so there's a lot of things that need doing, and senior scholars are time poor, and they can lend their status, if you like, to things that need doing. But they won't be able to have the time to do it. So for example, there's been a whole lot of great Connect type AOM Connect things on. The Strategist Practice Committee ran a bunch, which were hosted by Renata Cradaville, I don't say her name correctly, Madeleine Pop and Chien Lee. So they ran that. So as a result of that, we all got to know a lot of junior scholars. Plus, I remember those three people because they put a little bit of extra work in. They contacted me and asked me would I do it. So now I think of them when I think of, oh, who's some good scholars? I think of Fanny and Lisa because, you know, I know that they're running this and this is a great thing. So, you know, when you do things like that, I think about you. If I'm senior now, I think about you as someone I could turn to who could run something good and give something back and sort of thing. You know, David and I developed the SAP website and ran that for a while. Then, you know, like Violetta ran the newsletter. Shenghu, what did you do? I'm sure David had you doing lots of things. You know, so those things that you do are the necessary greasing of the wheels of the community. You get to know the community by doing that, all of the community. Plus, the senior scholars think, I'm looking for someone good or something. Or they think, oh, so-and-so's good. When someone says, do you know anyone good for this? You say, oh, these 4 people have impressed me. And they've just impressed you because you've noticed them, because they've done something to be noticed. So in that sense, yes, it takes time. Yes, it's work. And you may feel instrumentally, you know, what do I get out of this? You know, they should give me something back in return for it. We don't work in everyday practice on such we practice scholars are not so transactional in our social relationships. We just get to know and like you, and then we want to do stuff with you.
Thanks very much, Paula. I know Fanny's waiting to start, but I also know she'd want Steph to speak. Steph, go on.
So I just wanted to throw in a couple quick ideas that I heard as I talked, because I think there actually is a lot you can do. So, you know, just to emphasize Paula's point, when I was interviewing for the postdoc at Michigan, Andy Hoffman brought me around to meet people, and we knocked on the door of Jerry Davis, and Jerry Davis said, Stephanie Bertels, he said, last year I was in a real pinch and you did 2 emergency reviews for me for the Academy. And, you know, I hadn't even realized it was Jerry. I just did it for whoever, you know, but the point was I was useful, right? And so I'm a copious note taker. And it's just how I quiet my brain. But what I have found is, you know, you'll be at a session and this people are responding to questions and they're having this really engaging conversation. And I'll be taking notes. And at the end, you know, I'll just email them saying, in case they're useful to you, here are some notes I took during that Q&A for you. I don't expect anything from it, but it's interesting how years later I'll meet people and they'll say, hey, you sent me some really useful notes on that R&R. So, you know, you don't want to bombard people, but I think don't underestimate the fact that you're you know, as a junior scholar, you're a smart, engaged person who's at the height of knowing the literature. There's a lot that you can contribute.
Brilliant, thanks, Steph. I'm going to quickly go over to Fanny. The floor is yours for the live Q&A.
Yes, thank you so much, everybody. That was great. I'll have some flash questions because we really only have like 10 minutes. So I'll throw three questions. One is for Eero and the 2 others, anybody can jump in. So we had 2 questions relating to being slow. One of them was saying, can Eero explain a little bit more what being slow means? Slow in which aspect? And another participant sent, being slow is great, but how do you apply that when you're time sensitive in terms of PhD? So you have 4 years, you need to create those connections. How can you remain authentic, respect the pacing of connecting while at the same time having that time sensitive aspect? So I'll send that to you, Eero.
Well, great questions. I wish we had more time. The initial point about being slow, it really focuses on when you submit a paper to a leading journal or to any journal, so that we oftentimes have this tendency of setting these deadlines and, you know, we want to, you know, move on. You know, we know that, you know, time is scarce. There are other things to do. We want to, you know, progress in our careers, but it's a mistake if you send it in too early, because, you know, then you won't have this reasonable chance of getting an R&R. And the other side of the coin is that if you look at the statistics of any of the leading journals, it's a surprisingly positive percentage that shows if you get an R&R. So this is the real, you know, instrumental reasoning behind being slow. I don't know, probably there's a philosophical point about slowness, but I'm not going to go into that at all this time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Two other questions that are a bit more practical. One of them asks, what are the ground rules in terms of keeping your supervisors or your committee informed about your networking? So do you keep them in the loop in terms of who you're reaching out to? How transparent are you in terms of that? And the other question I want to throw in there is it worth it to visit other campuses, other universities? And at which point in your PhD should you be doing that? Anyone who wants to get in there. Paula?
Okay, so on both of those things, yes, if you have the budget to visit other schools and other campuses, you should definitely do that. That wasn't something that was available to me during my PhD, but then on the other hand, the UK is relatively physically, the proximity is fairly easy. So if you get to know people, you can at least maybe go to the seminars. Certainly anyone who comes to your campus to present, even if you don't think you're interested in their work, you should definitely arrange your half hour or go to the PhD. You know, there normally is a PhD breakfast or lunch with them. Definitely go to that and listen to the way that, listen to their presentation, listen to the feedback they get, the kind of stuff how they see the world, because that'll help you start identifying your tribe. So I think that's an important one. And then the other question, just run it by me again. I just fell in the first trap, which I didn't listen to both questions properly.
Should you keep your supervisors in the loop?
Oh, yes, that one. Yeah, I actually think, I mean, if you're just reaching out and you're getting to know people, I don't think you need to tell them that. But if someone offers you an opportunity to write with them or to, you know, do a piece of research for them, I definitely think you should discuss that with, if you have a good relationship with your supervisor will help you understand what is an opportunity and what is a time waster. And so I like my students to network. I try to encourage and help them to do so, and indeed to help out and do things in the community. But I also, you know, if they come back and say, look, I can write this book chapter, or so-and-so wants me to do this for them, or they've got a research project and they'd like me to collect the data, we discuss realistically how much time will that take, what will you get out of it, is it worth it to you? And then, of course, it's their decision. But I'm hoping I'm helping them make decisions that will be CV and career enhancing, as opposed to traps, because, you know, we all have limited time. I think Priya brought up the very relevant point too, that, you know, some of us are mature age, we've got children, we've got other lives we're running, so we need to maximize our time. So I would let your supervisor know if you have a good relationship with them.
Great. Maybe one last question, Lisa, if I can. There's a question from Michaela that seemed to be creating some noise regarding being useful, so maybe directed to Steph. What else can a PhD student, postdoc offer to senior scholars other than professionalism, like being on time, being specific, being concise, and respecting deadlines? Are senior scholars interested in data, or is it burdening to them? Is it something that they are interested in? Or should we just throw them some first draft papers? What are the kind of ways that we can show usefulness to senior scholars?
Okay, well, I'll think back to my postdoc and think about the ways that I tried to be useful. And so, you know, in the period when I was doing my postdoc, I was engaged with 3 different people principally. So Tom Lawrence, Andy Hoffman, and Jen. That's when I met Jen Howard Grenville, and we've since published together quite a bit. And so so data, yes, if it's interesting data or intriguing data to them, or data that they but data is not data. There's data, and then there's really well structured data, and senior scholars are interested in the latter. They don't have time to trove through your data with you, but if you've done a really, really good job and you know your data inside out, and you've coded it, and you know, you have some hunches and some things that are surprising and intriguing and interesting, that terrible word, what's interesting here, that becomes interesting, right? So part of it is that you need to kind of not expect them to be as excited about what you're working on as you are. The other piece, though, that I mentioned earlier is that as much as we would all love the luxury of having almost all of our day to read, we don't actually sit around and read and eat bonbons as much as I would love that. So in fact, you are immersed in the literature right now. And so the other thing that you can provide is structured reviews of the literature. And so those two things I think are really useful, and are things that you can, the other thing that you can do that I used to offer to do is I would say to people, hey, if you have papers that need reviewing and you don't have time for them, I'm happy for you to send them my way. Oh my God, do people ever love you for that?
That's great. Thank you so much. I think that's all my time, so I'll...
Well, I've got about four minutes left if you've got anything else, but...
Yep, well, I have...
If you've got another one, if not, I've got we have some other questions as well. So have you got any more, Fanny? Or...
Yeah, I have one that is not from the chat, but I think would be interesting. It's around the practical implications of research, and what role does networking play in disseminating your research to the general public? So what kind of strategies would you have to disseminate your research to the general public? So anyone would like to jump on this?
Steph, you want to go first?
Or Paul, I mean, so I think, as I mentioned, I think you do want to, if your goal is to have practical impact, and your goal is to really be working in the kind of practice space, then I think you do want to nurture those networks. So in fact, what Shenghu was saying earlier about go to the conferences, go to them often, I regularly attend the practitioner conferences in the area of sustainability. As you know, as or almost more regularly than I attend the Academy conferences, because I both present my work, but also I spend a lot of time meeting people and seeing what they're talking about, and that again is a great way to build up that network for access, to be able to do the kind of research that I do, which is very qualitative and very, you know, embedded basically within organizations. So I think that that's it. And the other thing is, you know, to practice writing non-academic work, because what happens is we spend all this time learning how to write for journals, which makes us pretty much useless at writing for the general public. So I think it is important as you go through to stay bilingual, you know, to basically to keep flexing both of those muscles. And whether that's a blog or whether that's, you know, there's a number of different ways that you can do that.
Cool. Paula, you have like 30 seconds.
I agree with what she said. No, seriously, I do want to have impact on practice. I also go to a lot of practitioner conferences. First, I went to them as networking and data collection. Now I'm known as an expert in the field. I often chair or keynote at those conferences now. I've actually ended up having quite a lot of industry sponsorship for my research as they've got to feel that it adds use to them. I always do reports, which, you know, you can go on my website and you can find the reports and masterclasses I make freely available, because I want to make a difference. I'm a management scholar. I have something to say in this, you know, I have something I believe, and I would like to help with practical problems. So in that sense, I don't see that. I mean, and I also publish well. So these things are not orthogonal, you know, they are, I think they fuel each other.
Great, over to you, Lisa.
Brilliant. So I think we couldn't have used 60 minutes better, really, could we? I hope everyone who's listening in has got a lot out of that. I think we've had about 90 people. We normally only get 50 in the room, so that's 40 people who've been able to attend who wouldn't have been able to if we'd been in Vancouver, much as I'm missing it. So thank you so much to our panelists, from Fanny, from Priya, from myself. And look forward to the other sessions, particularly the early career program. Oh, I know I've got a couple more sessions today. So thank you everybody for attending. Thanks to panelists. And if Ralph can sign us out, then thank you.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye.
you, and
Thank you,
thanks for all the
everyone.
comments in the chat, everybody. I enjoyed reading them.